For the next 31 days on the FCPA Compliance Report, we're going to be bringing you a daily tip, strategy, or idea that you can use to improve your program. Here's your host, Tom Fox, the Compliance Evangelist.
This month's sponsor of 31 Days to a More Effective Compliance program is Affiliated Monitors. Founded in 2004, Affiliated Monitors provides professional, independent integrity monitoring and ethics and compliance assessments nationally and internationally and across almost all industries. With its knowledge of effective ethics and compliance programs and cultures, Affiliated Monitors is respected for its work as the corporate monitor on matters ranging from multinational corporations to small and mid-sized companies and even individuals. Having served in over 750 monitorships, no one has more experience as an independent monitor than the team at Affiliated Monitors. For more information on how an independent monitor can help improve your company's ethics and compliance programs, visit this month's sponsor, Affiliated Monitors, at www.affiliatedmonitors.com. So GSK in China. In 2014, GlaxoSmithKline received a fine of nearly $489 million that was levied by Chinese court for its bribery and corruption in China. The case really turned on the complete, total, and utter failure of the company to manage its corruption program in China. There were numerous examples of payments made to nearly $500 million in payments made to corrupt Chinese officials. So what were the appropriate internal controls? You might think of a company as large as GlaxoSmithKline and one that had gone through the ringer of a prior Department of Justice investigation into charges for off-label marketing and an attendant corporate integrity agreement might have such controls in place. If it was not for the types of bribery, and it is not as if the types of bribery in China were not well known. The nuts and bolts of how bribery occur in China are well known. The systemic problem in foreign pharmaceutical company issues are certainly a conundrum. It's not a choice there because health ministries, hospital administrators, and doctors demanded it. There was the direct incentives and indirect incentives model, and GlaxoSmithKline did not have controls around either of these. The companies paid out enormous sums in sales expenses, including travel costs and fees for sales meetings, marketing and business development, and other expenses. Most of the large expenses and travel costs and meeting fees were several multiples of the net profits each company earned each year. It would be reasonable to expect that internal controls over gifts would be designated to ensure that all gifts satisfy the corporate requirements under the GSK compliance program. It should fall to a compliance practitioner to finalize and approve the definition of permissible and non-permissible gifts, travel, and entertainment, and internal controls would follow from such definitions or criteria set by the company. These criteria would include the amount of the spend localized down to the increased risk with a higher risk recognized in China. Within this context, I would suggest 4 specific internal controls. Is the correct level of person approving the payment or the reimbursement for the expense? Are there specific controls and sign-offs that the gift had a proper business purpose? Are the controls regarding gifts sufficiently preventative rather than relying on detect controls? And if the controls are not followed, how is the failure detected? Now, moving from the internal controls example, or the failure rather, of GlaxoSmithKline, I'm going to give you 10 questions that you can utilize in the third-party area around internal controls. So, 1, you conduct a regular risk assessment, because a risk assessment is part of your internal controls. Prior to entering a relationship, did management confirm alignment with its business strategy of the third parties, analyze strategic risk, perform risk review reward analysis, and review its ability to adequately oversee and manage the third party on an ongoing basis? 2, can the third party's activities be viewed as predatory, discriminatory, abusive, unfair, or deceptive to any customers in the geographic area it's located? 3, does the company's compliance system include policies and procedures to help manage third-party relationships, proper internal controls, training, monitoring, and auditing procedures to ensure consistent and ongoing compliance? 4, was adequate due diligence performed on the third parties who were signed on to work for the company? This can include a wide variety of reviews. 5. Are the expectations and obligations of the third parties outlined in a written contract prior to entering the relationship? 6. Does the board of directors review any material third-party relationships, or at least a compliance oversight committee? 7. Does the contract outline fees to be paid, reports, audit rights, limited other limitations, dispute resolution, and indemnity? 8. Did the board, or rather did the compliance committee, the compliance oversight committee, which handles third parties, review the operational and financial performance of the third party on an ongoing basis? 9. Is there a process to verify third parties' operations, and are they consistent with the written agreement, and are the risks controlled going forward? And 10. Does senior management allocate sufficiently qualified staff to monitor the third-party relationships going forward? So if you think about that in terms of the 5-step process of lifecycle management of third parties, do you have a business justification? Was a questionnaire completed? Is there due diligence performed, and was that due diligence analyzed and signed off on? Is there a contract in place with the appropriate terms and conditions? And then did you manage the relationship after the contract was signed? So within those 5 steps, you can ask those questions. You can clearly see the failures of GSK. So what are today's 3 key takeaways? I can't emphasize enough the failure of GlaxoSmithKline in China. It would appear that the complete, total, and utter breakdown of internal controls with no sufficient oversight from the corporate office. 2, do not forget the 5-step life cycle of third-party management and how each one of those steps acts as a separate internal control. And then you have sub-internal controls within each step. And finally, do not forget the 4 key internal controls that I articulated, which are: is the correct level of person approving the payment or reimbursement? Are there specific controls and sign-offs that the gifts, travel, and entertainment have business purpose? Are controls regarding gifts sufficiently preventative rather than relying on detect controls? And 4, if controls are not followed, is the failure detected? This is Tom Fox. Thank you very much for listening to Day 10 of 1 month to more effective internal controls, and I hope you... This is Tom Fox again. Hope you've enjoyed this episode of 1 month to better internal controls. If you've listened to this podcast on iTunes, I would greatly appreciate it if you would rate this podcast, as it would help in our rankings. The word out about the only 1 month podcast series, which enables you to design, implement, and enhance a better compliance program. Also, if you have any questions, please feel free to contact me at tfox@tfoxlaw.com. This is Tom Fox. Thank you very much for listening, and I hope you'll join us again tomorrow. Once again, thanks to our sponsor, Affiliated Monitors, for sponsoring this month's series. This production of 31 Days to a More Effective Compliance Program is a special production of the Compliance Podcast Network. I hope you will join me again tomorrow.